Hello, World Wide Web. I'm Dr. Shado, the internet personality with the best hair, and it's 2015. It's my first review of 2015. At least it was supposed to be. But anyway, in the spirit of moving forward to an ever-improving show, it's time for the theme song. I'm Dr. Shado, I'm Dr. Shado, I'm Dr. Shado, yeah! Okay, let's never do that again. How about we jump right into this week's film, Die Hard 2, Die Harder, made 2 years after the original in 1990. Die Harder stars Bruce Willis as Officer John McClane, whose Christmas is interrupted as he must save a bunch of innocent civilians from a group of terrorists who employ an especially elaborate plan that unravels over this movie's running time. Well, that sounds derivative. Okay, what does this movie do different than the first? This time the crisis is at Dulles International Airport on the East Coast. Also, due to the events of the first film, McClane actually has a reputation this time around. We also never see John and Holly bicker with each other, as they seem to have avoided finding anything else to fight about since the first movie. So without further ado, let's take a look. Now let's take a look at that movie, yeah. Okay, cancel all jingles! The film opens up with John McClane getting his vehicle towed because he parked directly in front of the no parking sign.
Come on, man, it's Christmas. So where's Santa Claus to give you another car?
Which establishes John's relationship with the local law enforcement, but come on, McClane was clearly in the wrong here. He was blatantly breaking the law. How many movies am I going to be watching where the first scene establishes that the protagonist is a selfish asshole? We take a second to establish John has a beeper before the random news report about the capture of a big face in the drug war is interrupted by Man-Ass, introducing us to the very evil and very naked Colonel Stewart, played by William Sadler, whose name I can now add to my big list of actors whose junk I have seen in HD. Thanks for that. Let's go back to the beeper, shall we? Turns out to have been from Holly McClane, again played by Bonnie Bedelia, who sings praises of the super high-tech 1990s.
Microchips, microwaves, faxes, earphones.
Oh, let's not forget about that cyber internet virtual web thing, power that can bring the world to its knees. Or provide pornography. It depends on the market, I guess. This scene is to establish that Holly has not landed yet, and it seems she won't for a while still. Also, she is seated next to a deranged sociopath.
I zap any bastard that screws with me. I tried it on my little dog.
Okay, so far 2 people in this movie have done things far worse than the bad guys already. Therefore, they have some catching up to do, and why not kick things off right by murdering an old man in a church? And the body count has started. Still not quite as evil as tasing a dog, but I'm sure they'll get there. Word comes to the bad guys inside the airport, and they discuss the next step in their operation.
That was the Colonel. Everyone's in position. Carry out your assignments.
Who the hell listening to that would not think that they are up to something? Hell, McClane didn't even hear any of that, but recognized the trouble from their body language and follows them. Which means that in less than 15 minutes, we have our first firefight. Because, it's a sequel. Fuck build-up. Sure, they might be destroying people's belongings, but McClane's the good guy, remember? Therefore, when he murders the fuck out of one of them instead of finding out who they are or what they want, that's good! And when the local police stop him before he can murder the other one, that's bad.
I'm a cop, that was a bad guy.
The bad guy who you followed and whose friend you just killed. Yeah, he shot first, but I wouldn't exactly call you innocent in this situation. Speaking of things not being so cut and dry, we find out that the reporter from the first movie, Richard Thornburg, played by William Atherton, is actually on the same flight as Holly, after they screw him out of his first-class seat merely because they don't like him. Seriously, fuck professionalism, they just don't like the guy.
Your episode Flying Junkyards was a very objective look at air traffic safety.
It wasn't nearly as edifying as Bimbos of the Sky, was it, Connie?
Here's the thing, folks. First-class ticket was bought and paid for. Yeah, planes overbook and shit can happen, but unless you really want to get fired or have your company get sued, complete your contractual agreements. On the plus side, it turns out that when Holly punched him in the face on national TV, they actually ruled in his favor.
I'm not allowed within 50 feet of him.
50 yards.
Sadly, nobody seems to suggest that either of them simply move over to the emergency exit for just a moment. Instead, they just offer her a drink, while, on the ground, McClane argues with Captain Lorenzo, played by Dennis Franz of NYPD Blue fame. Of course, here he plays MPDC, and doesn't give a damn about John's former NYPD current LAPD standing. Nor, it seems, he gives a shit about how the hotshot super cop from Nakatomi Plaza seems to think something is worth investigating.
I don't need full fucking forensics to tell me all this was some punk stealing luggage.
Luggage?
Oh, come on, it's never that simple. Haven't you ever seen CSI?
That punk pulled a Glock 7 on me. You know what that is?
A gun that doesn't and never existed? The guy had a Glock 17. There is no Glock 7, nor any Glock model number with a single-digit number as far as I can tell.
It's a porcelain gun made in Germany.
Polymer. Plastic, not porcelain. Also, Austria, not Germany. It is the gun, though.
Doesn't show up on your airport x-ray machines here, and it costs more than you make in a month.
Okay, when the Glock 17, the first Glock ever produced, was the big new polymer gun, there was this unreasonable scare about it not being able to be picked up on airport metal detectors. Ignoring the fact that the barrel and slide actually contain more metal than certain guns out there. But besides all of that, how the fuck would porcelain not be picked up on an x-ray? Shit, try to take plastic or porcelain vaguely shaped like a gun through airport security and enjoy the most thorough rectal cleaning of your life. More importantly, he notes that it's a ridiculously expensive gun to attain, which, while not accurate either, is close enough, as Glocks were newer at the time, so I'll let that slide. Therefore, the punk thief was actually a professional. Professional what? They don't know yet, but Lorenzo doesn't care, and has McClane removed from his station.
What sets off the metal detectors first? The lead in your ass or the shit in your brains?
After his last string of inaccuracies, I'm worried that McClane actually thinks that fecal matter sets off metal detectors. Things might seem to be going nowhere, but do not fear, for Super Cop McClane is on the case. And people don't seem to mind him commandeering various things to collect the dead man's fingerprints and fax them over to our cameo of Sergeant Powell, so they can run them and find out the dead man has been dead for years according to their records, deepening the mystery. Though, I still wonder how in the hell everyone was okay with him just reaching over their desk and using their equipment.
Say, I close in about an hour. Maybe we can go get a drink?
Of course, Bruce Willis is just so damn sexy. In the perfect storm of terrorist luck, there happens to be a worsening snowstorm all over the East Coast, shutting down various airports and causing more planes to have to divert to Dulles International. Also, apparently, nobody cared that civilian John McClane just waltzed into the control tower to exposit information about his funny feelings about this situation to Trudeau, played by Fred Dalton Thompson. Right on cue, John Leguizamo, voiced by someone else,
All systems tap, Colonel.
no fucking idea why, confirms to the rest of the bad guys it's time to initiate the big bad plan.
The runway, son of a bitch.
What the hell?
Shutting down.
Damn, now we've got to go out there and set up tea lights! I fucking hate setting up tea lights! Especially so, as nobody bothers to think of anything to do once they've established that the runways are off and emergency power won't work either. Not too concerned about it, as when they do order any airplanes en route to divert to another airport, they decide those already there can just circle until they fix the problem.
We just bought ourselves maybe 2 hours. After that, those planes low on fuel aren't going to be circling. They're going to be dropping on the White House lawn.
Awkward. Colonel Stewart calls the tower right up to explain the rest of the plot, that he wants the airplane containing the previously established big name in the drug war to be let into his hands, and all that jazz. Guess he just lucked out that his plans coincided with a massive snowstorm hitting the DC area, which we really don't expect around Christmas. I mean, that doesn't really happen until February. But on top of that, they were sending the military prisoner to a civilian airport, which they also aren't supposed to do. It's supposed to send to a military airport, which is a lot harder to take over, so that's really good planning on his part? Now that the shit has hit the fan, and McClane is proven to be right, they force him out of the control tower because they don't want his advice. Well shit, if they work any harder at trying to worsen their own situation, it's going to start looking like they're trying to commit insurance fraud. Which would be bad, as reporter Samantha Coleman, played by Sheila McCarthy, is there to try and get a story out of them. So they kick her out as well, meaning all she offers is a bit of information for John McClane.
Come on, McClane, just a few words.
Okay, just a few words. Fuck off.
Thanks, but I already got that from Colonel Stewart.
Yeah, she's been around the airport for a while and trying to get details about the shootout and what have you, and the reason I didn't really mention her earlier is because, well, she is one of about a dozen or so minor characters, and I really don't want this review going to the 40-minute mark. After this, John slips out to avoid being escorted away from the airport and runs into another minor character, Tom Bauer, who plays the janitor, Marvin. Utilizing his powers of eccentricism, they figure out that the annex skywalk the good guys think will work to restore their control of the situation happens to be the perfect place for an ambush, meaning McClane must hurry and save yet another minor character, Leslie Barnes, played by Art Evans, who is probably the most major minor character. He's there for most of the events, it's just that best, he works kind of like a sidekick for McClane. As extra punishment for falling into the trap that they themselves set, the bad guys do the unthinkable, and use computerific god powers to recalibrate the autopilot on the airplane being flown by Cole Meany, making them believe they were 200 feet higher than they actually were. Don't worry though, Super Cop McClane is there to save the... Never mind. But, one quick question, though. They said that the plane was running on fumes, that they were, out of gas, so, what the fuck caused that gigantic explosion? Thanks to the mysterious combustible passengers, not a single person survived the crash. Thus, McClane actually doesn't feel like Super Cop, and instead is the normal, flawed human being. For 2 seconds, anyway. After that, he's back to Super Cop. Still, it's a die-hard movie, so a higher-ranking force must get involved, which we get in the form of a Special Forces team led by John Amos, playing the role of Major Grant.
Isn't Colonel Stewart one of your men?
No, not anymore, he's not.
I got real sick of him doing his naked kata every goddamn morning. Every man has his limits! While Grant sets up his team, Barnes gets the idea to use the outer marker radio to transmit a message to the airplanes, letting them know the current situation, because that'll help? As it turns out, Thornburg listens into the signal as well, so after a break for another action sequence... Seriously, in my job, I'm looking through the movie seeing what I have to bring up in order for the review to be coherent, and what I could skip if I need time, but this... really, I could just cut it completely, but it's an action sequence, so here it is. The POW easily overpowers the one teenager guarding him, and after shooting the pilots and window, somehow doesn't black out or freeze to death. Instead, he follows Stewart's instructions to land the plane right where McClane was waiting for him. This accomplishes nothing as the rest of the goons arrive, secure the man, and escape while blowing up the airplane, but still not harming McClane. The big important thing here is that General Esperanza, played by Franco Nero, escaped with the bad guys. Everything else was just fluff. Entertaining as hell, but fluff. Barnes gets another idea to figure out where the terrorists have set up base. Turns out there's a suburban area that goes over some subterranean wiring for the airport. So, narrowing their search to the old church, McClane moves in to stealthily take down the bad guys. Even in the 90s, those things were more trouble than they were worth. Especially as cell phones already existed, such as the one Barnes uses to contact the control tower and get the troops to come down to get the bad guy. Seeing them coming, they swap out the red electrical tape magazines for the blue electrical tape magazines. What, were they out of green electrical tape? Come on, man, it's a Christmas movie! During this firefight, the bad guys escape out the back with their handy collection of snowmobiles. Again, they've really lucked out with that snowstorm. These planes take a while to set up, and they just so happen to know that DC was going to be colder than Alaska that week. Never underestimate a goon's desire to stop and look back at gunfire like a fucking moron when the plot calls for it, though, allowing McClane to pursue them on his own snowmobile. Not that it helps too much. Fucking gun is as responsive as Call of Duty multiplayer over DSL. Similarly bullshit, the enemy team has no problem having their hits register, destroying the snowmobile, but a lag spike prevents them from scoring a kill nonetheless. Well, that and it would be really hard for them to have 3 more movies after they off the protagonist. But things blew up, so fuck checking the body, let's just leave him for dead. That way, he can discover the big twist to this movie's plot. Yes, Major Grant is not just a former friend of Colonel Stewart, they're still buddies. The whole unit is. Except the new guy, so fuck him. At this point, McClane makes it back to the police station, and as Lorenzo still refuses to listen to him, takes care of that problem.
These are the bullets they used out there tonight. Blanks.
Oh, slippery bastards. They switched out the live ammo for blanks. and they somehow have weapons that can cycle blanks without causing them to explode when you switch back to live ammo. Clever indeed. So it's climax time. Therefore, Thornburg gets through to the station that there are terrorists everywhere, and people are dying, and will die, causing a completely unnecessary riot. And I mean that in every conceivable way. It really doesn't matter much at all to the plot or anything at large, but hey, riot! Let's hate him some more. But don't hate Holly. She's the hero of the skies who confronts Thornburg and drops him like a sack of potatoes. Is anyone going to check to make sure that man's still breathing? Back on the ground, or at least closer to it, McClane is in the helicopter that, of course, Sam had at the ready, being a reporter and all. All news reporters have their own helicopters, you know that. With a whole 5 minutes until Holly's plane runs out of fuel, McClane takes the final battle to the wing of the bad guy's jet, fucking up their takeoff with a coat in the aileron. The reason they don't just shoot his ass is because that wing is full of fuel, and it's easier to just not shoot instead of check your fire. It's still hard enough because John decided to jump on the wing instead of just shooting it to stop them. It's a good reason! Besides, these wings are super tough, with the jets able to fucking puree Major Grant without suffering any damage to themselves. This leaves McClane and Stewart to duke it out, as I presume all the expendable cannon fodder that's with the bad guys just don't give a fuck to help here. Still, the Colonel knocks John off, and John pulls the fuel cap off.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Pretty cool. Except, of course, for the fact that the jet fuel burns at so high a temperature, you probably wouldn't really be able to set it with a lighter. And even if you could, the fire wouldn't go fast enough to catch up with the jet going at takeoff speeds. Well, I suppose that would make for a much less satisfying ending.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Motherfucker. But holy shit! Along with taking out the bad guys, this trail of fire magically means that the other aircraft can use it as a guide to land the airplanes, without even using a second line to tell exactly how far away from it they are. I don't know if this resolution is good or not. I mean, yeah, the planes can land now, yeah, but it also means that they had everything in their power that they could have done from the start to help the planes land. I mean, yeah, they complained that if they set up battery-powered lights, the bad guys might just shoot them down. It's not like they ever tried, though. But how could they shoot out fire? They could have done... They just did... Why? And never mind. Happy ending! All the planes land safely, and the people live! Except for that one earlier with Colmini, but... yeah, who cares? Holly is safe, and that's all that matters.
Why does this keep happening to us?
For my entertainment. Anyway, that was Die Hard 2, Die Harder. It's decent? It definitely lives in the shadow of the original, but I don't think I have to convince anyone that that was a hard movie to top. What Die Hard 2 is a pretty straightforward sequel, and as far as I can tell, that's all that it was ever trying to be. Set around Christmas with the same hero and damsel as the first time around, Die Hard 2 does what it can to up the ante in the crisis while maintaining the feel of the original film. That mostly works, but there are a few issues here and there. First of all, while McClane felt very human and flawed in the first movie, this time around, he does come off a lot more like the super cop. Interestingly enough, the super cop feeling was something they worked hard to avoid in Die Hard. It just so happens it's hard to up the stakes without making McClane look superhuman. The second problem, as far as things feeling realistic goes, is that the acting quality in this one is a step down from the first. Some actors still give damn good performances, but several of the side characters just come off as goofy and not all that believable. Finally, while the events of Die Hard wove into a complex but understandable plot, many of the subplots of this film don't lend much at all to the main events, if anything. The result out of all of this is a movie that simply can't live up to the standard the original set for it. However, that is a ridiculously high standard. Die Hard 2, Die Harder, despite all that can be said against it, still is a very entertaining movie to watch, and even if it can't capture the feel of Die Hard, still manages to be a decent follow-up to the original, coming in at 4 Glock 7 porcelain guns out of 5. It actually surprises me that Glock took off like it did, when the first misinformation people got about it was that it was made out of the same stuff as your toilet. But thank you all for watching, I've been Decker Shado, and remember, flashing your villain's junk in our face first thing isn't the same as establishing the character. Unless his character is a serial flasher.
Where's your ID? On its way to Cleveland?